Learn to control what you say. Stoicism. Your words are a window to your mind. Speak with care, and the world sees your strength. Speak recklessly, and your value is questioned. In Stoicism, speech is not just communication, it is character. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And those thoughts become your words." If you don't master what leaves your mouth, you surrender your power to chaos. In every conversation, you have two options: react impulsively or respond with intention. Stoicism teaches you to choose the latter. A calm mind produces careful speech, and careful speech commands respect. Most people speak to win, to prove a point, to impress. The Stoic speaks to understand, to bring clarity, to maintain inner peace. Control over your tongue begins with control over your emotions. Anger, pride, envy, they want to talk first. Let them, then let them pass. Once they're gone, speak. That's Stoic power. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. The wise Stoic often says more by saying less. And when he speaks, his words land like stone, measured, firm, and unforgettable. You cannot take your words back. Once spoken, they carve themselves into memory, yours and others. A single sentence spoken in anger can undo years of trust. A careless joke can fracture a bond. A rushed opinion can expose your ignorance. The Stoics knew this. That's why Epictetus taught, first learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. They didn't aim to silence you. They aimed to sharpen your words into tools of clarity, not weapons of destruction. Mastering your tongue is mastering your future. The modern world celebrates speed, instant replies, quick comebacks, fast opinions. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Slow your thoughts, measure your response. Pause before speaking. Reflect before reacting. Ask yourself, does this need to be said? And does it need to be said by me? Now. In this tone, this internal dialogue builds a wall between you and regret. It protects you from becoming a slave to your impulses. Because when you rush, you reveal weakness. When you pause, you reveal strength. When you control your words, you start to control your life. People listen more. They respect your silence and value your speech. You become someone who brings peace to chaos, not someone who adds fuel to the fire. This is how a Stoic speaks, not to show off, but to elevate. Not to dominate, but to guide. Not to win, but to grow. Every word you say should be chosen like a sword from a warrior's rack. Pick it with purpose, then strike with honor. A Stoic man understands that silence isn't awkward, it's sacred. In silence, you hear more. You hear the noise inside others. You hear their fears, their pride, their desperation to be heard. And in hearing them, you gain control, not over them, but over yourself. Because true power is not in dominating others through speech. True power is found in dominating yourself through restraint. The weak shout. The wise observe. The insecure argue. The secure stay calm. In a loud world, quiet strength always wins. Words shape perception. You are judged by the things you say, long before people know who you really are. That's why the Stoics treated words like currency. They didn't waste them. They invested them. And every word they spoke was backed by thought, clarity, and intention. If you speak out of habit, you reveal nothing new. If you speak out of discipline, You reveal depth. Choose your words like a sculptor chisels marble, slowly, precisely, and with full awareness of what you're shaping. There will be moments when you feel cornered. When you're provoked. When your pride begs you to respond. That's your test. That's where your training shows. Most people react. The Stoic reflects. Instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, they detach from the emotion and speak from principle. And often, they don't speak at all. Because sometimes, the most stoic thing you can say is nothing. Your calm silence is louder than any emotional rant. It stings more. It teaches more. It lasts longer. You don't need to raise your voice to raise your value. In fact, the louder you get, the more you lose control. A man who cannot control his tone cannot control his life. The Stoics knew this. They spoke with calm confidence, not nervous energy. They understood that power is not proven by how much you say, but by how you say it. A sharp mind never needs to shout. When you speak with calm precision, the world leans in. When you rant, it turns away. Every conversation is a mirror. It reflects your discipline or your weakness. Are you quick to interrupt? Do you dominate the room with noise? Or do you bring clarity, direction, and purpose? A Stoic lets others finish. He listens, not to reply, but to understand. His words are not weapons, they're tools. Tools that build trust, show respect, and express wisdom. This is rare today. That's why it stands out. If you become this man, people will remember what you say, long after you say it. The tongue is a small part of the body, but it creates massive consequences. Wars have started over words. Relationships have ended with a sentence. Empires have crumbled because a leader couldn't control his mouth. Don't underestimate what your voice can create, or destroy. As a Stoic, you must treat your speech like fire, powerful, useful, but deadly if left unchecked. You're not just protecting your reputation when you control your speech. You're protecting your peace. You're protecting your future. Sometimes, silence is not a retreat, it's a strategy. The Stoic doesn't rush to speak in order to defend his ego. He allows silence to work for him. Most people are afraid of silence because it forces them to sit with themselves. But the Stoic embraces it. He knows that in silence, emotions lose their grip, and reason takes the lead. By saying nothing, you allow others to reveal more than they intended. In arguments, this gives you power. In relationships, it gives you clarity. In leadership, it gives you respect. When you slow down your speech, your mind sharpens. And when your mind sharpens, you choose your words like a warrior chooses his next move. No wasted effort. No emotional outbursts. Just calm, effective precision. That's what separates the Stoic from the average man. The average man speaks to feel important. The Stoic speaks when it's important. You see the difference. One speaks from ego, the other speaks from wisdom. One wants to be heard. The other wants to be understood. You must learn this truth. Every word has a cost. It either builds or destroys. It either adds peace to the room or brings tension. And the more careless you are with your words, the more unstable your life becomes. If your mouth is always running, your mind never gets the chance to lead. Your speech should reflect your self-control. If you can't discipline your tongue, it means your emotions are in charge. And when emotions run the show, regret isn't far behind. There's a strength in restraint that many never understand. A Stoic isn't silent because he has nothing to say. He's silent because he has the strength to wait. He watches. He listens. He studies the room. Then, when he does speak, every word hits its mark. It cuts through the noise like a blade through fog. And because he speaks so rarely, people pay attention. This is influence, not forced, not demanded, but earned through discipline. The Stoic mind always filters speech through 3 gates. First, is it true? Second, is it necessary? Third, is it kind or helpful? If your words don't pass through all 3 gates, they don't deserve to leave your mouth. This standard may seem high, but that's why Stoicism creates uncommon men. The world has enough noise. It needs more clarity. It has enough opinions. It needs more insight. When you live by this rule, your words gain gravity. You're no longer just another voice. You become a signal in the storm. You don't need to respond to every insult. You don't need to prove anything with your words. That's what weak men do. They speak because they can't sit with discomfort. They attack because their pride is fragile. But the Stoic doesn't crumble under pressure. He remains grounded, composed, calm. You insult him, he remains unmoved. You provoke him, he doesn't flinch. Why? Because he's not controlled by emotion. He's guided by principle. And because of that, he becomes untouchable. Think about how much pain in your life has come from saying things you didn't mean. Words spoken in anger, in fear, in jealousy. Moments when your emotions hijacked your mouth. And then, regret. The Stoics knew this pattern well. That's why they made a habit of pausing before speaking. They created space between stimulus and response. Between emotion and expression. That space is where your power lives. You don't have to speak. You choose to. And when it's a choice, not a reaction, it changes everything. In relationships, this discipline is gold. When your partner says something that stings, you don't fire back. You don't try to win. You breathe. You listen. And when you speak, you aim for peace, not punishment. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's the Stoic way. You don't speak to control the other person. You speak to control yourself. And when you master that, your relationships transform. Arguments fade faster. Respect deepens. Trust grows. Because people feel safe around a man who controls his tongue. Your ability to communicate determines your influence. Whether in business, leadership, or family, your words shape the way others see you. The Stoic never wastes this opportunity. He speaks with structure. He doesn't ramble. He doesn't over-explain. He says only what needs to be said, and he says it clearly. This doesn't mean he's robotic. It means he's intentional. His speech reflects his training. And because of that, people listen when he talks. They know his words carry weight. When others gossip, the Stoic remains silent. Not because he agrees, but because he understands the power of integrity. Speaking behind someone's back is a sign of inner weakness. It reveals a restless mind trying to feel important. But the Stoic doesn't need that. He finds dignity in silence. He'd rather say nothing than say something that damages another. This kind of self-respect radiates. People notice. They trust him. They admire him. Because in a world full of talkers, he's a listener and a leader. The world doesn't need more men who talk just to be heard. It needs more men who think before they speak. Most people today confuse confidence with volume. But real confidence doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to dominate conversations. It dominates itself. The Stoic doesn't speak to impress. He speaks to express value. He speaks to lift, not to crush. And if there's nothing valuable to say, he stays silent. Because he understands something the world forgets, your words are a mirror. They reflect your inner discipline or your lack of it. Your ability to hold your tongue is proof of maturity. Especially in moments when silence feels like defeat. That's when true Stoic strength is tested. In the heat of conflict. When someone insults you. When you feel the urge to clap back. This is your battleground. Will you let ego push your mouth open? Or will you let reason keep it shut? This is why the Stoics trained daily, not just in thought, but in restraint. Because the man who controls what he says, controls how others react. He becomes the calm in the storm. The one others turn to when emotion runs wild. When you choose silence over reaction, you communicate strength louder than words ever could. You show that you are not controlled by others' behavior. You show that your emotions are not wild animals, you've tamed them. And when you do speak, it's not noise. It's impact. Your words hit with force, not because you yell, but because they're rare, real, and rooted in something deeper than ego. Think of great leaders. The ones who made a difference. They weren't the loudest. They were the clearest. They didn't rant. They revealed. They didn't explode. They exposed truth with calm certainty. That's what Stoic speech looks like. It's not flashy. It's grounded. It doesn't chase attention, it earns respect. And that's why Stoics rise. Not because they say the most, but because they say the right thing at the right time in the right way. Even when you speak the truth, Stoicism teaches you to speak it with tact. Because the goal is not to crush the other person, it's to clarify the path. Many people use truth like a hammer. They swing it without thought. But the Stoic uses truth like a scalpel, precise, careful, healing. There's no point in winning a conversation if you lose the connection. Your goal isn't to prove superiority. It's to communicate with honor. When your truth is soaked in compassion, people hear you. When it's laced with ego, they resist. The Stoic also understands timing. He doesn't just think about what to say, but when to say it. Some truths must wait. Some corrections must be delayed. Some reactions must be paused. Not everything demands a response right now. That's patience. That's wisdom. The ability to say, "Not now, let this breathe." That's how you preserve peace in your relationships. That's how you lead without force. That's how you win long term. By speaking not just to win today, but to preserve respect tomorrow. One of the greatest tests of your speech is how you talk about others when they're not around. The weak mock. The average gossip. The Stoic guards his tongue. Not because he's afraid, but because he values his integrity. When you speak about someone, you reveal more about yourself than them. Every insult exposes your own insecurity. Every careless comment stains your character. But when you refuse to speak negatively, you stand apart. You show discipline. And in that discipline, you build a reputation that others can trust. The Stoic's words are like a blade, but not one that slashes aimlessly. It's like the blade of a surgeon. Clean, accurate, used only when necessary. He doesn't waste his breath on pointless arguments. He doesn't try to impress with big words or long speeches. His words are clean, direct, effective. And in a world of noise, that clarity is magnetic. People are drawn to it, they respect it, they remember it because it's so rare. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. That's another form of verbal weakness, constantly defending, justifying, over-explaining. The Stoic lets his actions speak. He knows that character doesn't need a speech. If you're grounded in your values, you don't owe every critic a response. You don't owe every doubter your time. When your speech is driven by insecurity, you talk too much. When it's driven by clarity, you talk just enough. And that balance, speaking when needed, holding back when wise, that's Stoic mastery. This kind of verbal discipline creates freedom. You no longer say things you regret. You no longer damage relationships with impulsive words. You no longer feed drama with your reactions. Instead, you build a life of peace, respect, and strength. You become the man who doesn't flinch when insulted, who doesn't rant when triggered, who doesn't fall apart when challenged. You become the man others admire, even your enemies. Why? Because you do what few can, you control your tongue. And the more you live like this, the more powerful your presence becomes. You walk into rooms and people feel it not because you speak loudly, but because your silence carries weight. Your calm gaze says more than other people's entire monologues. Your few words change the tone of a conversation. This is the Stoic advantage. You don't chase respect. You earn it in silence. You command it with speech that is intentional, mature, and elevated. One of the highest forms of discipline is to remain calm while being misunderstood. The average man panics when his name is dragged. He rushes to defend himself. He argues, explains, and justifies, because he's ruled by pride. But the Stoic understands that silence in the face of falsehood is sometimes more powerful than truth shouted in panic. You don't need to run after your reputation like a dog chasing a car. When you live with integrity, your actions will speak, even when your words are silent. This kind of restraint takes strength. It's not weakness to say nothing, it's a sign of mastery. You control your urge to respond. You train your mind to pause. You remind yourself, what do I gain from reacting right now? And often, the answer is nothing. Because most arguments are just emotional sparring matches. No one listens. No one learns. But the Stoic, he listens. He speaks only when it elevates the situation. He understands that winning an argument often means losing time, energy, and peace. This is why Stoics focus on the intention behind their words. Before speaking, they ask, am I speaking from clarity or emotion? From reason or reaction? This moment of self-check stops many unnecessary conversations. You don't always need to correct others. You don't always need to comment. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. Because you're no longer a prisoner to your emotions. Let's be honest, words are powerful. They can light a fire or extinguish one. They can bring war or peace. They can inspire or destroy. So how dare we be careless with them? How dare we throw words around without precision? The Stoic treats his words like a swordsman treats his blade, with care, with purpose, and only when necessary. Every sentence you speak carries weight. So ask yourself, is what I'm about to say helpful? Is it kind? Is it wise? Or am I just reacting out of pride? Controlling what you say is not just about staying quiet. It's about speaking with wisdom. The Stoic man knows when to speak, how to speak, and what to speak about. He understands that gossip is a disease of the weak. That mockery is a mask for insecurity. That vulgar speech exposes a vulgar mind. So he refines his language. He speaks in a way that reflects inner strength, not outer show. His words don't just fill silence, they bring clarity, calm, and courage to those around him. If you want to become this kind of man, start by observing your speech. How often do you speak just to fill the silence? How often do you regret what you said in anger? How many bridges have you burned with your tongue? Now ask, what if I paused? What if I waited before replying? What if I trained myself to think before I speak? That one pause, just one, could save your career, your relationships, your peace. That's the power of restraint. That's Stoicism in action. Imagine a world where men controlled their tongues. Where fathers didn't scream at their children. Where leaders didn't insult their opponents. Where men didn't speak out of impulse or anger. What kind of peace would that create? That's the Stoic vision. And it begins with you. The next time you feel that fire rising in your chest, pause. Breathe. Choose silence. Or speak only what improves the silence. That's how great men are built, not by how much they say, but by how well they say it. And don't mistake this for being soft. Stoic speech is not passive, it's powerful. It's the power of calm in a storm. The power of logic in a world of emotion. The power of restraint in a culture of reaction. This is real strength. Because any fool can speak his mind. But it takes a wise man to master it. The Stoic chooses his words like a sculptor chooses his strokes, each one intentional, each one designed to shape something greater. Silence is not the absence of words. It is the presence of self-control. In your silence, people learn who you really are. They see your patience. They sense your depth. They recognize your inner power. Some men try to impress by talking. But you impress by not talking unless it's meaningful. You stand apart because you're not easily rattled. Your words don't rush, they arrive. And when they do, they matter. A Stoic man does not speak to prove his worth. He lives in such a way that his presence does the talking. He doesn't run his mouth to prove he's right. He shows it through action. Because he understands that words without character are noise. But words that come from a life of discipline, those are thunder. Those shake the room. And when you live like this, people begin to lean in when you speak. Because your words are backed by something real, a life of control. The world is noisy, full of empty talk, reckless opinions, endless chatter. But the Stoic man rises above it. His silence is more powerful than most men's shouting. His speech cuts through the fog like a sword. His voice is calm, grounded, purposeful, and in that calm, people find clarity. That's what makes him magnetic. That's what makes him respected. Not volume, but value. Not emotion, but wisdom. Not constant talking, but disciplined speaking. You must train your speech the same way a warrior trains his hands. You must learn when to engage and when to walk away. When to correct and when to hold your tongue. When to speak and when to remain still. That training doesn't come overnight. It comes through daily practice. Through journaling your reactions. through catching yourself mid-sentence and pulling back, through apologizing when your words cross the line, through building a life that aligns with what you say, so your words and actions are one. And here's the truth: the more you control your mouth, the more control you gain over your mind. The two are connected. When you pause before speaking, you strengthen your awareness. When you speak with discipline, you build self-respect. When you withhold unnecessary words, you conserve energy. That energy becomes focus. That focus becomes power. The man who talks less, thinks more. And the man who thinks more, wins more, not just in argument, but in life. If this message spoke to something deep within you, if you found value in learning the power of restraint, the strength of silence, and the discipline of speech, then don't let it stop here. Like this video to let the algorithm know that Stoic wisdom still matters in a noisy world. Subscribe to the channel if you're on a journey to build inner strength, emotional control, and mental clarity, one lesson at a time. This is not just a channel. This is a brotherhood of men becoming stronger, wiser, and more composed in a chaotic world. If that's the path you're on, then you're exactly where you need to be. New Stoic insights drop every week. Real talk, real growth. So hit the bell icon, and let's keep building the mind that speaks only when it's time to speak, and remains calm when others lose control. This is Inner Steel. Stay sharp, stay silent, stay stoic.